Good afternoon, this is David Wendell with BushcraftOnFire, and we're pleased to be with you for another video. I want to talk to you today about a survival mentality. You know, I've looked on YouTube and I really haven't seen very many videos about survival mentality, and I think that people have the wrong idea. You know, survival mentality is probably the most important lesson that you can learn when you're out there in the bush. So what I want to do is just to go over a couple things with you today. A lot of people feel that a mentality to have in survival, or in life for that fact, is a mentality of divide and conquer. You know, divide and conquer is not a good mentality to have. Divide and conquer will actually end up costing you in the long run, possibly even costing you your life in a survival situation. Now, better than a divide and conquer mentality is to have the mentality to be able to adapt and to overcome. You know, I guess in our lives we've been in a real survival situation, if you would, for the last 4 or 5 weeks. First of all, Tam's brother died. A week later my dad died. Then we had a winter camp, and now Tam is in Canada again with her mother on very, very sick, and they're not expecting her to live more than a few more weeks or months. So everybody goes through these situations in their lives. Everybody goes through things where they need to survive, as it were, not just out in the bush, but to survive in every aspect of your life. And better than a divide and conquer mentality, as I said, is the ability to be able to adapt to whatever comes your way and to overcome. Adaptation is very important in the bush. And so what I want to do is just to share with you a couple thoughts. I noticed that there's a lot of people that have either one of two thought streams. Either they believe that they know everything, or there's people that understand that there's many different ways to do things, and their way is not necessarily the right or the correct way. You know, that's so true in life, especially in survival. There are literally hundreds of ways to make shelters. There are hundreds of ways to purify water. There are hundreds of ways to start fires. There are many different ways, and if you remember your rules of three, let's go over them for a minute, because not everybody is necessarily familiar with the rules of three. The rules of three, as far as I know, was coined by Dr. Ron Hood, and it basically states that you have 3 minutes to live with no air. So you don't want to put yourself in a position where you're underwater, for example, or where you're locked into an airtight container such as a plastic garbage bag for more than 3 minutes, or you're going to be in some trouble. You have 3 hours to live without shelter. Now, shelter can go from anything from your clothing to a tarp to a tent to a house, whatever your shelter is, primitive or in life in general. You need shelter, and you only have 3 hours that you can live. Your body has a certain core temperature that has to be maintained. A lot of people think of shelter needs only in the winter, but shelter is also important in the summer. If it gets too hot, you can't function properly, and you'll begin to dehydrate or overheat and have some problems that way. The next rule of threes is you have 3 days to live without water. So water is very high on the priority list. And then, of course, 3 weeks without food. A lot of people put food right up there. They want to know how to eat when you're out in the bush. In a true survival situation, food is really not very important. So you want to keep these rules of three in mind. Air, shelter, water, and food. Now, where does fire fit in there? I believe that fire fits in with shelter. And so your sheltering and then your fire would be very critical. You can't have water without fire in today's society generally. You have to purify it somehow. You may have water tablets. You need fire for extra warmth if it's very cold. So those things are a good basis to remember when you're in a survival situation and have to keep a survival mentality as your rules of three. Now, as I said before, once that you understand the rules of three, then you can adapt and overcome to every situation in life. If you have a situation where, for example, say you were on an airplane and it crashed in the middle of the Andes. There was a movie made about that. And you have to keep those priorities in order, but you also have to have a mentality that you can do what it takes. Now, in order to do that, you have to practice your skills. You have to be confident with yourself and with your capabilities. So once that you get everything organized in your mind out there in that situation, then you need to begin to say, okay, how can I adapt to the situation I'm in? Maybe I can take parts of this airplane, or I can take a tree from over here and make a shelter. Perhaps I have snow around me because we're on a mountaintop, and so I can get water with it. Perhaps that there's some wild edibles and I can use that for food if necessary. But again, you've got to remember that rules of three. You've got to be able to adapt wherever you are. Now you say, well, I don't have a shelter out there. But you've got an airplane, and you can take the different parts of that airplane, some steel or some aluminum or some plastics. You can take some cushions from a chair, and you can make a shelter that's very versatile, and it will end up keeping you out there. Now, as I said earlier, there's no one right way to do this. Some people have the mentality that it's their way or the highway. You know, if you don't do it the way that I do it, then you're doing it wrong. Folks, the truth is, if you have shelter, it doesn't matter how you built that shelter. It doesn't matter if the shelter is not as functionable to one person as it is to another. What matters is that you are pleased with the outcome with the situation. And of course, survival is also a process of evolution, where you'll take something that you've begun. It doesn't really matter how you do it. It matters to get out there and try new things. What can I use? Whatever's at hand. Here's a pile of leaves. We've already shown on different videos that these leaves can be used to make a shelter. These leaves can be used to insulate your clothing. These leaves can be used to make a pillow to sleep on at night. They can be used to start fires. They can be used to float in water with a pin on the front that it will give you a direction. For example, basic directions of north, south, east, and west. If you have a pin that's magnetized on one end and you floated this in water. There are literally hundreds of uses for just a leaf. And anything that you find out there can be adapted to what you need to use. But in order to do that, you have to be able to think. So you need to be able to adapt with whatever's at hand for you to use. And in order to do that, you have to be able to think outside the box. That's a term that I really like. A lot of people look at something on their person, say that they have a knife. You know, we've talked before, you only carry things in the bush that have many uses. Well, this knife has an obvious use as cutting, but I can also use my knife for literally dozens and maybe hundreds of other things. I could use it for a spear point. I could use it for a gig. I could use my knife to dig with if I had to. I wouldn't do that generally, but in an emergency situation, I might need to. I could use my knife for all sorts of different purposes. But that's what a survival mentality is about. To be able to take what it is that you have and to function with it and use it for the purposes that you have to fulfill. And again, your purposes will fit that rules of three that we've already outlined. So just a couple thoughts here about survival mentality. Again, I know that I'm probably preaching to the choir. Most of you probably already understand this. But you know, you've got to have a positive outlook when you're in the bush. You have to have a positive outlook in life, or you're not really going to succeed. So put some of these thoughts into your mind, and we appreciate your viewership. We appreciate all the comments that we get. We appreciate your ratings, and that you guys give us feedback on how to make the videos better and to do what we need to do in order to put out quality videos for you. Couple of quick announcements. We have a winter camp coming up in February 7th through the 10th. There are 2 spaces left available. If you want to get to that winter camp, you need to get an application into us very, very quickly. The time is short. There's only 2 weeks from this Sunday that we will be there. We're going to have a great time. It's at a local cave here. We're going to have an awesome time. Paul Scheider's coming down from St. Louis. He's going to help teach some classes. We've got 5 or 6 students that are coming in from all over Illinois, from western Missouri, and we're excited. We got somebody coming from Oklahoma, somebody talking about coming down from Washington, somebody talking about coming down from Mississippi, coming up from Mississippi. So we're going to have a great time. And if you can get out there, we'd love to have you with us. The information's available on our website, and I will put a link to that over on the sidebar right here that you can find our website and go to that class schedule. This is David Wendell with Bushcraft on Fire. Do keep Tam in your prayers as she's traveling in Canada. We appreciate you guys very much. Join us again soon for another video. And until then, adapt and overcome in every situation in your life. Have a great day.